So, start in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you so much, Lord, for bringing us all here tonight. Thank you for this chance to reflect on your crucifixion, your passion, what it means that the crucified Christ is still present in the world of today. We pray in a special way for all the different realities and situations that we know of, and also the ones that we don't know about, where many people are suffering today. We pray that we can be your instruments to relieve that suffering, to help bring you down from the cross. And we pray in a special way for all those people who perhaps are crucifying you in different ways, that they can understand what they're doing and work to help and ease the suffering of so many people who are struggling in the world of today. Help us, Mother Mary, to have that same heart, to be able to stand at the foot of the cross like you did, and to really see and understand and have that same love and concern for each one of your children. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay, so we're going to continue in the School of the Word tonight with the series that we began at the beginning of Lent on the crucified Christ. So we're saying this is one of the sources of spirituality that we have in Bourbon Day, in our Bourbon Day community, but it's also a very deep source of spirituality for many other communities as well, and for the whole church in a sense. So last week we were contemplating the kind of like the historical crucified Christ. So how Jesus died on the cross for us in the scriptures, and we know that that really happened 2,000 years ago. So we were praying with the story of Jesus's passion and his death on the cross. And yeah, I think most of us who were there were touched by the reality of Jesus and what he went through for us, and kind of like that expression of his love through the cross. So tonight we're going to pray about the crucified Christ of today. Now, I don't know if you've heard that term before. So I guess to explain it a little bit, I thought I'd tell you a little bit of a story. Last week I was telling you about the story of the Japanese guy who went to Spain and he saw the cross in the middle of the church and was really shocked. I want to tell you another story about, it was a bishop who was used to go out and help, kind of like Our Lady's Kitchen that we do here in this parish, where you go out and actually help the homeless people, like the Vinnie's van sort of thing. And as part of like keeping in touch with the community. So he went out and he encountered a homeless man. The homeless man saw his crucifix. You know how the bishops have like a big pectoral cross they wear on the front. And the man kind of had a look at it and he said, "Listen, Mr. Bishop," I think he called him. He said, "Listen, Mr. Bishop, I was just wondering, why do you have this picture of Jesus on the cross?" He said, "Because I always grew up in the church. And when I went to church, they used to tell me that, you know, the Catholics, they got it all wrong because they always have Jesus on the cross. But Jesus was crucified 2,000 years ago, but then he rose from the dead. So it seems a bit wrong to keep him on the cross, to keep him up there on the cross. It's like you crucify him again." And the bishop said to him, "We kind of have Jesus on the cross because in a very real way, Jesus is still on the cross today. So don't you think that he's suffering in all the innocent people who die in the wars? Don't you think he still suffers in all the babies who are aborted? Don't you think he still suffers in all the people who are bullied at school, in your other homeless brothers and sisters on the street, all the people who continue to die for their Christian faith? So we wear that crucifix as a reminder of what Jesus did 2,000 years ago, but also as a reminder that Jesus is still there. He's still there on the cross in these lives, in so many people who are still suffering and struggling in the world of today. So we want to remember what Jesus did for us, but we also want to remember what is still happening in today's world. So that's what we're going to look at today. The fact that Jesus is still there, still suffering in a way in the world of today. So to help us enter into that, I thought we could start with a passage from Acts chapter 9. So Acts chapter 9, we're going to look at verses 1 to 5. So Acts chapter 9, verses 1 to 5. I'll give you a little bit of time to find that in your Bibles or online, however you find it. So if one of the people online would like to volunteer to read it for me, I know Sienna is a very good reader. So if Sienna wanted to read it for me.
Yeah, we're just getting it up now.
We just arrived. I'm just trying to, my app on my phone's not working. And that's
Okay.
when we read the
No
Bible.
Maybe I'll let you read one of the other ones. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Very good. So do I have another volunteer who can read for me Acts chapter 9, verses 1 to 5 online? Okay. Do I have to volunteer someone? Okay. Edna, do you have it? Okay, very good. Edna.
Then Saul, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest and asked letters from him to the synagogues of Damascus, so that if found any who were of the way, whether men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. As he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly a light shone around him from heaven. Then he fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" And he said, "Who are you, Lord?" Then the Lord said, "I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. It is hard for you."
Very good.
Okay.
Yeah, stop there. Okay, so
Sorry, Father, what verse was that? Acts, what was it?
as Acts chapter 9, verses 1 to 5.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's a very interesting passage, this one. So this is St. Paul. He's actually, it's before he became St. Paul, is when he was still Saul. He was there, and he was very convinced that the Christians were the wrong people. Following the wrong religion, following Christ. Christ was like a heretic, basically. So he was there and he was persecuting the Christians. So he never actually met Jesus in person. Well, we don't think he did anyway. This is the closest he got to meeting Jesus in person in this vision. But Jesus, what does Jesus say to him in the thing? "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" And he's saying, "Wait a minute, I'm not persecuting you. I'm persecuting these Christians." But Jesus identifies himself with the ones being persecuted. He's saying, when you persecute them, you're persecuting me. When you're crucifying them, you're crucifying me. When you're making them suffer, you're making me suffer as well. And this helps us to understand what we're trying to pray with today. Jesus identifies himself with all the people who are suffering in the world of today, for whatever reason, especially those people who are being persecuted because of their faith. And there's a lot of people who are still suffering in the world of today. So the whole idea of that passage is to help us to understand it's like Jesus continues to be on the cross in a way in all the people who are in their particular sufferings and deaths and trials of today. So whatever we think of, whatever we're really inspired by in the world of today, whether it be the situation in Ukraine, the problems with the people who've lost their homes in the flood, all the people who've lost loved ones to COVID, all the people who are living in fear or in struggling with different health problems. All of these things are kind of like a connection to that cross of Christ. And this is one of the things that can really help us to be motivated to live out our faith to the full when we see how many people are still suffering in the world of today. And to really believe that the gift of faith and the good that we can do as Christians can make a difference to that, suffering. So I want to go now to the main reading for today. So the main reading for today we're going to use is from Psalm 22. So I've actually prayed with this in the School of the Word tonight before, but I'm going to look at it in a different way today. Psalm 22, It's in the book of Psalms. It comes after Psalm 21 and before Psalm 23, just in case you can't find it. It's always my favorite verse. Okay, so Sienna, are you ready?
What is it?
Yep. So Psalm 22.
Yeah, so just read verses 1 and 2.
Okay.
Okay. I don't think this is the right one. Okay. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? Why art thou so far from helping me? From the words of my groaning. O my God, I cry by day, and thou don't not answer. And by night I find no rest.
Very good. Yeah, have very old school version of the Bible there. Does this remind you of anything? These words? Do these words remind you of anything? Sounds a little bit like what Jesus said on the cross, yeah? In fact, Jesus is quoting this psalm on the cross. Just in the moment, according to Matthew and Mark, just in the moment when he's about to die. So it's like he's feeling that abandonment. If you're listening to some of our guidelines last week, I think Father Steve was talking about this in his guidelines, about how Jesus genuinely felt abandoned. But many other people in the world today also feel that same level of abandonment. How many people do you know feel lonely, feel depressed, feel worthless, cast aside in the world of today? Many. If you've ever visited an aged care or nursing home, you'll encounter many people who feel abandoned, who feel lonely, who feel like they've been kind of cast aside from society, who often only receive a visit from their kids, like maybe once a month. Or you see all the attention being paid to the victims of the war in the Ukraine, but you very rarely hear about many other conflicts that happen in Africa, for example. The Ukrainians have been welcomed as refugees in Europe, which is good to hear. But there are many refugees who've been living for years in refugee camps in Lebanon, and no one really seems to care. No one seems to do anything about it. No one seems to have any space for them. There's refugees who have applied for asylum here in Australia, and they've been waiting for 8 or 9 years for someone to decide whether they're a refugee or not. Imagine this is here in Australia. How many people feel abandoned by us and abandoned by God because we don't do anything? How many people are there who are our friends in theory, but we don't actually reach out to them and speak to them and give them the help that they need? That's Jesus who is there in those people. He's repeating those same words that he cried out 2,000 years ago. My God, why have you abandoned? Especially when we're supposed to be representing God. We're supposed to be the face of God to these people. It's quite sad when you think about it, the fact that that continues on today. Okay, so let's continue on. I'm going to go to verses 6, 7, and 8. So if someone else wants to read verses 6, 7, and 8 from online.
I can read that, Father.
Okay, Ivan.
6, 7, and 8. But I am a worm and not human, scorned by others and despised by the people. All who see me mock at me. They make mouths at me. They shake their heads. Commit your cause to the Lord. Let him deliver. Let him rescue the one in whom he delights.
Yeah, so this one's, I really see this as speaking about many people who feel bullied or emotionally abused. You think about how many people still get bullied by their schoolmates or by their workmates, even by their family members. Happens a lot. How many people suffer from low self-esteem because of the treatment of the people around them? You might have seen the recent news. I don't know if you saw the recent news about this politician, Kimberly Kitching, whose family and friends claim that she suffered from bullying by her own female party members. Bullying's always happened. It's not anything new. I was bullied myself at school. Hard to believe, I know, because I'm so handsome and smart and everything. we know that bullying still happens. And there's a lot of anti-bullying stuff going on at school. They have all these programs and stuff, but it's very hard to stop because it can be done so secretly. Nowadays, if anything, it's even worse because now, even when the kids get home from school, they can still get bullied on Messenger, on WhatsApp, on Facebook, on Instagram. You can get 24/7 bullying, imagine. Before, at least you could go home and you got to get away from the bullies, at least for the evening. But now there's kind of nowhere to help. And of course, there's other types of persecution that continues to happen, like religious persecution. People are ridiculed for their Christian faith, ridiculed just for having faith. I certainly suffered that at times in my work as well. Sometimes when you said that you believed in God, people would look at you as though you have two heads. And when you say you're Catholic, they bring up all the stuff of the sexual abuse scandals and stuff like that. Imagine when Father Steve and I were ordained, Channel 7 interviewed us last year. We got on the Channel 7 news. And it's pretty unusual for two brothers to get ordained priests at the same time. And we have a sister who's a sister as well. So they interviewed us, they interviewed our sister, they interviewed our mum and dad. And I remember looking at the comments in the video on the Channel 7 Facebook page. And I would say about a quarter of them were nasty comments referring to us as pedophiles. Imagine, it should be like the happiest moment of your life when you're being ordained as a priest, and people are persecuting you. Jesus continues to be abused on the cross in the world of today. Same thing that happened to him on the cross, where you got called all those names saying, "Come down if you're the King of the Jews," and so. There's still that same mocking, that same abuse is still happening today to many people. So many people are still being abused, still being mocked, still being lied about. So I just want you to think about that a little bit and think about similar situations and allow this passage here, this psalm, to speak about the things that are happening in the world of today. And it's not necessarily to make us feel depressed or sad or anything, but go, I want to do something. This is not good enough. Our world shouldn't be like this. Okay, so we're going to continue on. So get another volunteer to read verses 11 through to 16. So maybe Jane, you look ready to read verses 11 to 16?
Okay, let me see. The Lord's, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. The Lord said to him, "Get up and go to the street called Straight."
No, this is not in accent, in Psalm 22.
Oh, sorry. Okay, 11, right?
11, yeah.
Do not be far from me, for trouble is near, and there is no one to help. Many bulls encircle me. Strong bulls of Bashan surrounded me. They open wide their mouth at me like a ravening and roaring lion. Roar lion. I'm poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax. It is like melted within my breast. My mouth is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue sticks to my jaws. You lay me in the dust of death. The dogs are all around me. A company of evildoers encircle me. My hands and feet are shriveled.
Thank you, Jane. I gave you a very hard one.
Very hard, yeah, very hard.
Very good. Thank you very much for reading
No
it.
problem.
So when I was praying with those verses, I was praying with them, and I was really, what struck me was like this feeling of the world. It's like kind of like the whole world being against this person, really feeling like surrounded by everyone, being attacked by everyone, like he can't get away. And sometimes that can be the feeling that we experience a bit as Christians at times. I feel it sometimes when I see them bringing in laws like abortion up until birth, or the legalization of same-sex marriage, permitting euthanasia. And it makes me feel like very sad, kind of like a bit depressed in that I feel like we're losing the fight. I feel like we're losing the culture war as Christians. Like the whole world is against us. Like we're surrounded, like you said, by these wild bulls and these roaring lions. And I feel like we're being attacked by a pack of dogs, a gang of villains. It's like, you can get that feeling sometimes. It's like the culture seems to be going the opposite way of Christianity. Of course, this is nothing new. We think we're the first culture that's been living through this, but nothing new. And it makes me sad when I think about some of these situations that I just talked about. And often you feel like it shouldn't even be necessary to have laws because the truth seems so obvious. How is it that an unborn child has the most to fear from her own mother? How is it that an older person, an unwell person should feel that their life is so without value that they want to take their own life? Why is one person's life so precious while another person seems to be worth nothing? But then you understand that Jesus is on the cross. Jesus is suffering, not just in the so-called victims of euthanasia or abortion, but also in the ones who are doing the abortions, having the abortions, the ones who are encouraging euthanasia or advocating for euthanasia. Many mothers who have abortions, that they feel abandoned. We're talking about feeling abandoned, feel abandoned by their partners, abandoned by their families, and they've been indoctrinated to believe that it's not really a child, it's just a clump of cells. It's only a part of their body, even though their conscience tells them that it's a human being, that there's something horribly wrong with what they do. In the case of euthanasia, many of the ones around the person who is suffering think it's merciful to help them to take their own lives because they can't bear to watch them suffering pain, or because they don't have access to good palliative care. And they're also indoctrinated by society into thinking that a life that implies suffering and pain is not worth living. It's very hard to face suffering and pain and death without faith because there's really no hope. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. There's nothing to expect out of it. Some of the people who suffer the most in this world are the ones who have no faith, because it's like an emptiness to their life. Maybe they're the ones who are also on the cross. Maybe they're the ones who are also suffering a lot. Okay, so we'll do another little passage. So get another volunteer. I'm thinking maybe Grace, if you're still there. Do you want to do verses 17 and 18?
Not a problem. 17. I can count all my bones. My enemies stare at me and gloat. They divide my garments among themselves and throw dice for my clothing.
Thank you. So when I was praying with these verses, I was kind of like struck by these images of starvation, of nakedness. When I was thinking, that the author can count every one of his bones, he says, I can count every one of my bones. I was remembering those images, you remember when they used to have in the 80s, it was quite common, of the starving children in Africa, and you could see all their bones all the way through. For World Vision or Project Compassion, it was quite common. You could count all their bones. They're just pure skin and bone, and their heads seemed really big because they were malnourished. And there's still people starving today, despite the fact that we produce enough food to feed the world, 3 or 4 or 5 times over. Some people still don't have enough food, to the point where they're dying of malnutrition. While in most of the Western countries, you have others who die of the effects of obesity from eating too much. Seems a bit crazy. You've got people in one part of the world eating so much that they die. The other part of the world, they can't find enough food, so they die. It's completely crazy. But there's also a moral and a spiritual starvation, which is kind of going on too. So many people are being raised without values, raised without God. So many people are being brought up thinking that happiness is all about stepping on whoever I have to in order to get to the top. So many people are told or they're taught that happiness lies in having the most money, the most pleasure, the most power, and doing whatever you can to get a hold of it. So many people are starving for something deeper, something more meaningful, for something that fills their hearts and not just their bellies. Our hearts are made for God, but so many people have never even heard of him. They aren't even taught how to pray by their parents. They aren't taught how to make space for him in their lives. They're totally ignorant of how good their lives could be if God was part of it. They're starving. So many people have been stripped naked, stripped of their dignity as human beings. One of the biggest industries in the world today is the pornography industry, which makes billions of dollars at the expense of the dignity of others, especially women and children. And directly connected to that is the prostitution industry, which exploits the bodies of mostly women and buys and sells them for money. So many lives are destroyed every day by these industries which strip the victims naked of their innocence, of their intimacy, of their dignity, just like Jesus being stripped naked on the cross, Calvary. This image also reminds me of the victims of sexual abuse in the church. So many young people who had their innocence and dignity and childhood stripped from them by the ones who should have been the face of God to them. Very sad. They didn't just have their innocence stripped from them, but also their faith. How could you ever trust a priest or someone representing the Church of Christ again? At one level, I think it's unfair that the church has been, kind of disproportionately represented in all the sexual abuse reporting. But when you think of what the church is supposed to be, the fact that the church is supposed to be the body of Christ, it should be scandalous that any one of its members could abuse innocent children in that way. Much more scandalous than any other organisation. If I go back now to pornography and prostitution, it's not just the ones who are on display in pornography or who are sold in prostitution who suffer. The ones who use pornography or go to prostitutes have their minds warped so that they find it really hard to see members of the opposite sex in the right way. They start to see them as objects instead of persons. You talk to married couples going through difficulties, it's astonishing how many times pornography's played a part in those problems. More and more, pornography's become an addiction, especially among young men, but also among young women. And there's many other addictions. You have drugs, you have alcohol, you have gambling, computer games these days, unfortunately, especially among kids. And they're very real crucifixions because they cause so much pain to the addicts, but also to their loved ones. One of the big wake-up calls about this reality of Jesus suffering in the world of today was when I heard a woman from Croatia sharing about her brother. She was sharing about how he developed an addiction to drugs. And up until that point, I'd never had much time for drug addicts. I always kind of thought, they kind of get what they deserved. You choose to do drugs and you deserve what you get into, kind of thing. And I kind of blamed them, I guess. I said, you shouldn't have turned to drugs in the first place. But I was listening to this woman sharing about what she and her mum had gone through, and it changed my attitude. How his drug habit actually started when Croatia was going through the war, and so many families were broken. He started hanging out with the wrong crowd, and she was sharing about all the effects that it had on his life. How his personality changed, the sleepless nights wondering when and if he would come home, and how he was stealing things from her and her mum, how he's promising that he would never use drugs again, and then a week later he's back doing it again. And seeing this woman and seeing the tears flowing from her eyes, about a man who was on the other side of the world, someone who was a drug addict who I never really had much time for, who caused her so much pain, so much grief, and yet he was deeply loved by her. And that really touched me. I don't cry very often. I think I shed a few tears. I was trying to hide it from everyone because I get very embarrassed because I'm a big, tough man, of course. But I started to see that this drug addict was a real human being. He had weaknesses, he had flaws, but he had people who loved him. And if I was in the same situation, maybe something similar could have happened to me as well. I really started to see, Jesus in those drug addicts. Jesus is there. He's in the ones who are addicted to drugs, who are addicted to alcohol, to pornography, to gambling. He's still on the cross right there. And that makes me sad, knowing that Jesus still continues to suffer in so many places in the world of today. I haven't even touched on many other situations like racism or poverty or mental illness. Sometimes when we're faced with all these realities, we can feel a bit overwhelmed. It becomes too much and we have the temptation to just, switch off and think about something nice, something that makes us a bit happy. And we live in a world that we've kind of fashioned many escapes, so many ways of turning off so we don't have to hear the bad news. But avoiding reality doesn't make that reality go away. It doesn't help us. It doesn't make things better. In fact, the longer we don't address these things personally and as a society, the worse they get. But what gives me strength is knowing that just as after Jesus' crucifixion and death, there was a resurrection, we can hope for a resurrection in these situations too. We can hope for a resurrection for the crucified Christ of today. Christ is on the cross in all these situations, in all these realities. Just as he brought hope and salvation and redemption through his own passion and resurrection, he can bring it to all these places too. And I believe that he wants to use us to do that. We who care about it. But we need to pray before we can respond. We need to be moved, we need to be touched by Jesus on the cross of today, just as we are by Jesus dying on the cross 2,000 years ago. So tonight's not a night where we're going to work out all the strategies to fix all these problems. We're going to fix up all the problems of the world. We're here more to contemplate Jesus on the cross in all these situations. We want to see, hear, and feel his pain, so we're motivated to do something about it. So let that contemplation of Jesus crucified today start a dialogue with you and Jesus on the cross. Ask Jesus how he feels there on the cross. Bring these situations to him. Ask him, Jesus, what can I do as a response? How can we as a church respond to all of this suffering? How can we help you come down from the cross in these concrete people, these concrete situations? So I'm going to leave you with some questions, which are going to help you guide our prayer. So I'm going to read them out now, but I'm going to post them in the chat, and I have some paper ones here for the ones in person. The first question is, read Psalm 22, the verses that I was sharing before, 1 to 2, 6 to 8, 11 to 18. And then ask yourself, can you see how Christ continues to be crucified in the world of today? Where and in what way? What realities are you reminded of when you read this passage? And then the second point that we can pray with is start up a dialogue with Jesus. Ask him how he feels about all those who are suffering the most in today's world. Tell him what realities affect you the most, and then ask him how to respond, because he has the answers. We don't have to do all this stuff ourselves. We're always going to be dealing with Jesus. So I'm going to stop our recording here. I'm going to give you 20 minutes to pray. We can come back at 8:35.